I wanted to talk about toxicity in gaming and how gaming can be important for people's mental health. I was browsing through the RuneScape 3 community on Facebook a little while ago, and somebody said that they'd lost a friend to suicide on, and they had shared their experience together in RuneScape, and then they lost this person. And I thought, that's that's a sad thing, but it's not the first time. And then somebody replied on this message board. They said, well, why do so many stories like this surface of somebody ending their life and they were RuneScape players? And I think this is probably relevant to gaming in general. We hear about these sad stories from time to time. Somebody's hurting, somebody's going through something. And, gaming can be a safe space. It can be a refuge for people who are going through something that's difficult in real life. I was watching a video Asmon Gold had made a while ago, and he was reading some feedback that he'd gotten from some of his viewers. And there was some girl who said, I was in an abusive relationship and I was, just not doing well. And my boyfriend would watch your channel and it would be playing in the background. And I would be in this, a bad situation, but this channel was going and it was something that I could kind of focus on that would help me to kind of feel like I could escape that situation in my mind a little bit. It was like a respite in a way. And so she became a fan of his channel for that reason. And what I'm getting at here is that, we have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. In some of my videos that I've been making here in the last week, we've talked about topics similar to this. And I was talking about, some of the objections I've had to Albion Online and different things like that. And the problems that toxicity can bring into the gaming space. And then, of course, the way game design itself can sometimes lend to a toxic environment for players. Like, for example, Albion Online has got a full loot PvP system, which can just make the game feel like a hostile place for players. And, is it? Well, it's kind of splitting hairs if you say, well, the game is designed in a way that makes it feel uninclusive to new players, or if you say it actually is filled with toxic players. Like, maybe it's not a toxic player that griefs you, maybe it's just the game is kind of that way, that's how it works, and then someone gets griefed more or less, or they get killed in an unfair match or something like that. And it doesn't really make a difference from the player perspective, the new player perspective. It doesn't make a difference whether that is a player on the other side of the screen who's just playing the game and enjoying themselves, or if it's, maybe someone who actually has more of a nefarious goal to be unfriendly or toxic or uninclusive. And it's true. Like, if you totally hate a game, then you probably shouldn't play it. Like, that's a totally fair point. But then I also see remarks from people who will say something like, well, like you just need to go play something else. Well, okay. Like, for me, like, first of all, I do play other stuff. Like, I don't really care that much necessarily about any one game. Like, if a game went offline or I couldn't play it, I would find another one, right? But in the case of a game like Albion Online, it's been really hard for me to actually stay away from the game, because despite the things that I maybe sometimes don't like about Albion Online, there's things I really, really do love about it that no other game actually does a better job of. I've talked about the player-driven economy in Albion Online, and it's just amazing. It's true. EVE Online does a better job. Space simulator game. But space simulator game is not the same as having a character that runs around in a fantasy environment like Albion Online. So there's just, in terms of that, creating a character in a fantasy game and having a realistic economy that you can interact with to work on life skilling and gathering and crafting and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's just only so many options for games that scratch that itch. And Albion Online is a game that does a really good job at a lot of different things, like user interface and compatibility with different platforms. And, you know, I could just go on and on. But this video is not about why you should or shouldn't play Albion Online. And I could make a devil's advocate video on either side of the fence. I can tell you a lot of reasons why I would tell you not to play Albion Online, and I can tell you reasons why you should take a break from it, or you know, I can also tell you reasons why I think that you should definitely play it. There's just a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and it's an interesting game. But when we get back to this topic of mental health and fostering a positive community, you know, there's these people that want to say, well, if you're not having fun, get out, go do something else, go play some other game. And that's like, it's like a relationship where, you know, somebody, you know, things aren't going well. Your you know, your spouse is, you know, on your nerves, you're frustrated, and you're like, oh, well, if you don't like it, well, then just you know, just leave. Okay, well, you know, that's not really helping anybody. Like, it's easy to say that, but that's not really helping anybody. It's not helping you. It's not helping your partner. And it's the same thing in gaming, because you can, yeah, you can tell people to get out if they're not on board with your play style. But, you know, these people are there because they thought it was cool. They're there because they wanted to give that game a chance. They wanted to give the devs a chance. In the case of a live service game, you know, they might be paying for premium. They might be paying members, essentially customers, who are there because the game has something to offer that intrigues them, excites them, triggers their imagination. And what you really don't want to be doing is creating an environment where you have the hardcore group, like maybe the PvPers and the min-maxers, and then they come along and say, oh, well, you know, everybody needs to be on board with what we think is the best play style, and then if you're not interested in that, well, then just get out of our game. And I know this is a problem because I've heard about it from a lot of different people in the community of Albion Online. It's not the first time I've heard about this. And it's just it's reality that you have people that come in, new players, and maybe somebody is just a casual and they don't have the best experience. And then after a while, what happens when, instead of kind of catering to people and trying to make them enjoy their experience no matter how they play, we just kind of say, oh, well, get out of here. Well, you know, it is just a game. And then they leave. And then you have tons and tons and tons of players who have signed up, made an account, played a little while ago, and then you have a friends list full of people who haven't signed on for many years. And that's kind of sad. It's kind of sad when you think about it. But it's also even more sad when you put it in the perspective of mental health and all of the positive benefits that gaming can offer to people, because you just don't know. You don't know what somebody's going through on the other side of the screen. Maybe it's somebody who is living in a country that's different than your own country. Like take Albion Online. It's cross-platform. It's a game you can play with people all over the world. And you don't know, like, what kind of people are you playing with? Some of them might be your neighbors. Some of them might have a life that's very similar to you, or maybe it's somebody who has a mobile phone and that's their only way to access gaming, to access a sense of community. Maybe for them, you know, for some people, $15 a month is a lot of money. For some people, it's not. You know, there's all these different things, you know, but then like somebody will be like, oh, well, you know, you don't want to pay for premium. Well, why are you playing the game? Well, okay, well, maybe for some people, paying a monthly sub actually is a lot of money. And then I've seen people say, well, if $15 a month is a lot of money for you, then maybe you shouldn't be playing video games. That really isn't fair. And I'll tell you, from the experience of having financial struggles in the last few years, which I have since overcome, gaming was a way for me to kind of feel okay to a point at a time when I didn't feel like I had control in my life. Now, was I spending a whole bunch of crazy amount of money all the time at the expense of working on my financial situation? No. But it doesn't change the fact that if you're struggling in life, that doesn't mean that you should be grinding all the time and never have any kind of a sense of personal hobby or enjoyment in life just because you can't afford to pay $15 a month for a sub in a video game. I think gaming has something to offer to everybody, and quite often you could actually be saving money by having a hobby in gaming, because truth is, gaming is a pretty affordable hobby compared to eating out or going on a vacation somewhere or whatever the case might be. So sometimes gaming is actually a way for people to segue into better financial stewardship or something like that. So just, maybe the lesson here is we just shouldn't be judging people so much. We should be looking at people through a lens of empathy. We should be saying, okay, how can we, make people feel seen? How can we make them feel accepted? How can we make them feel like they're having a good experience? Like I made that video the other day about why I left Albion Online, which is really ironic because like right now here I am making a video while I'm playing Albion Online. And somebody was like, well, why did you do that? And I'll tell you why. It's just because, the truth is I did leave Albion Online. I have left it many times, as a matter of fact. I've taken long breaks from the game. I've let my subscription lapse. I've walked away from it because sometimes I just didn't want to play it, But then I've come back because there's reasons why I like it. And you can have a kind of a love-hate relationship with something, and you can appreciate some things and not appreciate others. And I think it's okay. You can totally talk about why something is not good, and then you can also at the same time talk about why it is, because oftentimes there's a duality in life. There's things that are really cool, and then there's also things that are really toxic. Like I could carry that over into career, into going to work. Like I've worked for the same company for 15 years. Well, actually, yeah, around in there, right? So you spend a decade and a half. For me, my entire working career at one company, doing different jobs, but one company. And on one hand, that's really amazing. It's super cool because it's consistency. It's this journey. It's a sense of adventure. And you look back and you say, look at all these different things I've experienced over the years. But then you look at the toxicity in upper management, and you see people that burn themselves out, and you see the min-maxers of the corporate world that are out there trying to prove themselves and kind of being cutthroat and being backstabbing and trying to play politics. And there's a case to be made for, maybe there's a point where I should just walk away. I'm not saying I want to quit my job. I am saying that you can be really committed to something, and then you can also look back on your life and say, what the heck was I doing? Because you only have one life to live. So don't prioritize something at the expense of your liberty, at the expense of your freedom, at the expense of your mental health, right? Like, you got to be able to hang up the coat and call it a day once in a while. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. But then at the same time, being in it for the long haul is pretty dang cool too. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to play Albion Online forever. I know that I've been playing this game for a very long time now. I mean, in gaming terms, I think a few years is a long time. I wasn't there since the beginning, but I have been there for a while. And, you know, I got a somewhat well crafted island and house in the game, and I've got a bunch of silver that I've earned. And, you know, like, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you think, man, I don't know. Like, I started playing RuneScape 3 the other day, and I started enjoying it, and I thought, this is pretty cool. And I thought, man, I don't know. Do I want to start over another game where you're, you know, life skilling, click the tree some more and then level up? Yeah, it's fun. But I kind of did that in Albion Online. Like, why not just maybe stick to the game that I actually have been, you know, have kind of loved for a long time. You know, sometimes you just have to realize, it's like if I have a job and I work for Walmart, and then I think, oh, I think maybe I will quit and I will go work for the grocery store down the street. You know, okay, why do that? Because is the grocery store going to be all that much different? I mean, they're just retail stores, man. Like, you know, like I've always looked at young people who do this. I see younger people do this more because you're just starting off your career. It's a lot easier to kind of just leapfrog all over the place and not commit to anything, right? But you have somebody and they get a minimum wage job at some fast food restaurant, and then they quit and they go to another fast food restaurant. And I find myself thinking, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you going to go from one thing to something that's basically another flavor of the same thing? It's like these cell phone games. You ever see these advertisements for them? Like, every single one is basically the same. It's just ultimately timers that count, and then you grind by clicking the button and then waiting for the timer, whether it's Farmville or, you know, upgrading your base and, you know, like a Clash of Clans kind of game or something. Like, it don't really matter. It's all the same basic thing. It's clicking on timers and then being AFK, and then eventually getting to a point where you spend real money and become a credit card warrior to try to see if you can progress when the timers get so long that it's just ridiculous, right? Like that's kind of what it all boils down to. And so, you know, don't leave one thing just so that you can go jump into a variation of the same exact thing. If you're going to quit and go do something different, then do something different, for gosh sakes. Like, I think sometimes we think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and then we don't actually even go anywhere. Like, we just go from one bad situation to the next, and that doesn't really help us. Or we go from something to something that's pretty much the same, only we expect it's going to be different. But really, is it how different really is it? You know, like the new game experience, the orientation at work, like those are going to always be kind of the best part, right? You log into the game, you play the tutorial, you start to think it's cool, but, you know, that doesn't really tell you a whole lot about whether you're going to be having a good experience 4 years down the road, right? But anyway, all things considered, you know, I guess I'm probably kind of just rambling now, but I think that this topic of mental health and gaming is an interesting one and relevant to the channel. And I think it's important for us to be very mindful of how the things that we do may affect the experience and the lives of other people, even if it's something that we do for fun. Because what to you is just a game might be a lifeline for somebody else. And you just never really know. You never know how much good or how much bad you could be doing to another person. And that's why it's important to have the attitude that in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. Don't be a person who wants to flex at the expense of somebody else. Don't be a person who wants to, you know, shut down somebody else just because you can. Because The things that really matter are community. The things that matter are the things we can do to make somebody's day better, to make somebody's life better. And I think it's important for us to not lose sight of that, even if it's something that we supposedly are doing just for fun. It's sometimes it's more than just a game, because it's a way to improve the lives of others. So try to be a good person. And there's a selfish takeaway there as well. Because let's think about this. Let's just say that you are inclusive of other people and you try to create a community that's positive. Well, you know, you do get better retention. You do get overall a better experience for yourself too. Let's take Albion Online as an example, because that's what I've been talking about. Well, it's a PvP centered game. Like, that's the bottom line. That's true. But it's also a life skilling, crafting, economy game. Like, there's a lot of other things you can do in Albion Online other than just combat with other players. And as time's gone on, even if it doesn't seem like it, the experience for a random solo life skiller type player has gotten better in Albion Online over the years, because the developers have been reaching out to try to create a wider spectrum of experiences in the game. Like I was listening to a dev talk a while ago from these guys that made Albion Online, and they were talking about how, you know, they wanted to make an MMO initially. They wanted to make an MMO, but they had a very limited team. They couldn't really do anything that would be close to competing with something like a Final Fantasy 14. They couldn't create a bunch of voice acted quests and make a AAA game. They were going to have to do something simple. So they really kind of made the game based on player interaction instead of more of a theme park, because that was about the only option they had. The players had to be the content, because they didn't have the resources to create tons and tons of content for the game when it launched. And so what started as a mechanic of necessity eventually turned into a core part of what made the game unique in the MMO sandbox space. And in more recent times, the game's expanded. Now we have 3 servers. We used to have just 1. And there's more PvE content coming to the game. There's more things to do to make a new player feel like there's content. Still a open-ended sandbox, but it's a lot more deep for the individual solo player than it used to be. And I'll imagine as time goes on, the amount of content in the game for different play styles will continue to diversify and evolve. And a big part of that is dependent on how big is the player base. Is the player base big enough to support more innovation from the devs? And the only way you're going to have a healthy player base that continues to grow beyond a certain mass is to care about their experience. And that means casual players, it means solo players, it means the PvP crowd, it means the guildies, it's all of the different people who are together making the game what it is. but that's important to mention, because I think there's a lot of people in the community of some games that think that they have a certain way that they want to play, and anybody who is different should just hit the road. And that attitude, not only is it not helpful to improve the lives of fellow players and be just all in all a good person, it's also not helpful to the game community, because what you don't want to have a game where the only people who actually stick around are the hardcore players who just are in it for the long haul, right? Like, you want a diversity of players in the game. You need that. And the only way you're going to have that is to listen to all of the different voices in the community and create content that appeals to all of them to some degree. And so be nice to people. And I continue to have this attitude that, I think from a gaming perspective, I think Elder Scrolls Online is pretty amazing. And I'm still, like, right now, I'm just focusing on trying to catch up on some of the many, many zone quests I haven't done in that game. But it's got an amazing community, an amazing game world, but it's not a sandbox, and so I've been looking for a game to fill that sandbox itch, and Albion Online on and off has always been that game for me. And I don't really see that changing. I think I'll probably continue to play Albion Online in some fashion. Lately, we've been trying to make a guild, and I appreciate the people who have been joining and working together to help turn it into a real thing. I appreciate the responses that I got to that, which has been actually pretty cool. And I think once you start a snowball rolling, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to grow something when you begin. Somebody replied in a comment on one of my last videos that he said, I have a guild, and we are nice to people, and it's not, we don't have toxicity, and it really starts to spread. And the more people start to understand that they're not allowed to be toxic or hostile to other people, then they kind of drop the act, and they start to potentially bring out the best of themselves instead of the worst of themselves. And I think that's maybe that's kind of that's a quest in itself, isn't it? To say, okay, can you go into an environment where maybe people are a little bit crazy sometimes, there's toxicity, but there's also good people. Can you go into there, and can you accentuate the positive? Can you bring out the best of people instead of the worst common denominator? And if you can, then that's a huge win. And I think that's kind of the goal. That's why I thought instead of walking away from Albion Online or just criticizing the potential problems with the community, what if we actually work together to try to create more inclusive, positive communities inside the game? Like, wouldn't that be pretty cool? Anyway, I always love to hear your thoughts, and to everybody who does take time to reply to these videos, know I do appreciate it. Whether you agree with what you hear or you have some criticism or whatever it is, I always enjoy reading those. And occasionally now it looks like we start to have enough comments in the videos that I actually may not respond to all of them, just because I don't get the time. So definitely appreciate the feedback. Anyway, till next time, as always, good luck on your adventure.